This is Dateline News and Conversation. My guest tonight, my dear friend, a regular on this show, an expert on warfare, nuclear treaties, nuclear weapons, and what's going on in the war in Ukraine. Vladimir Kozin, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much, Rezes. Happy to see you and your audience once again.
It's always a pleasure. All right, Vladimir, we have to start with what was the big news 4 days ago on May 22nd, the fall of Artyomovsk, or Bakhmut in Ukrainian. Vladimir, how important was this? Was it merely symbolic?
No, it was not symbolic, Regis. It has three types of strategic significance for the Russian Federation and for our friends and allies. What are they, these three significant points? Well, first of all, we managed to destroy a lot of aggressors who invaded initially Donbass in 2014 and later on the Russian Federation in 2022. Nearly 45,000 military men from armed forces of Ukraine have been obliterated, and three times as much have been wounded during the fierce battles we had, much fierce than probably in the Second World War. The second strategic goal to prevent strategic counteroffensive declared by Ukrainian chieftains something like 3 or 4 months ago, which still has not started yet. So with such casualties and losses, the armed forces of Ukraine will not be able to start any sound, any rational offensive or counteroffensive, it doesn't matter. And the third strategic achievement was that by liberating Artyomovsk nowadays it's a single name of the city. We have forgotten Bakhmut. There is no Bakhmut anymore, only Artyomovsk, because it is located on the territory of the Donetsk People's Republic, not in Ukraine. So it's a Russian city, Artyomovsk. Artyomovsk named after famous revolutionary at the beginning of the century. His name was Artyom. Artyom is a Christian name. So liberation of Artyomovsk opened new ways of our movement towards another cities en route to Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. The first of all, Kramatorsk, then Slavyansk, and Dnepropetrovsk, and many others. Well, I know that there were some criticisms that during the siege, encirclement of Artyomovsk, there was rumors that Russian armed forces allegedly suffered losses at the flanks of the encirclement forces. It was, as now it became clear, that it was arranged deliberately to have a weak flank deployment of Russian troops in Artyomovsk, so that to invite more and more personnel and military hardware to be channeled into the city, Artyomovsk, like vacuum cleaner. It sucks everything, dust, papers, some small particles. So the only road that existed for quite a long time leading to Artyomovsk was intentionally arranged by Russian military command in order to suck a lot of forces into Artyomovsk and to destroy it like a mouse in a special booby trap, trapped cage, I think, a small cage to arrest small mice at home. So the significance is great, and President Zelensky is very frustrated. He's very frustrated. It is obvious by watching his face during many visits to foreign countries. And the chief of general staff was wounded severely during our missile raid, and he has got a number of injuries into the head and into the other parts of the body, and so he is not able to be a commander of the Ukrainian armed forces anymore. Well, certainly Zelensky will find another person, probably his deputy, but Mr. General Zaluzhny, I'm talking about that man, the chief of general staff, and who is a master minder of Ukrainian movements and counter-offensive or offensive, etc. He is not capable to command the shabby Ukrainian armed forces anymore. Regis?
Okay, so I have to ask you this. You know, people everywhere are speculating, but what comes next? Will there be a great movement? You mentioned that they opened the way to other cities on the way to Kiev. Is that Russia's objective? Is that what comes next? Or do they go
Look,
to
yes,
Odessa?
there are two options to destroy this Banderist neo-Nazi regime entrenched in Kiev. So either persuade or to force it to surrender totally and completely, or to move further to capture the capital and the rest of the country, and just to force it just to raise their hands as a symbol of surrender, or just hoist the white flag. You know, because people in my country fully understand that, for example, if we leave just square kilometers of Ukrainian land packed with militarism and neo-Nazism and nationalism and extremism and aggressiveness, it means that it will expand its aggressive movements and militaristic ambitions again and again. So it will be not logical to have such scenario. That's why, I mean, as I read, our major strategy in Ukraine is to ruin the armed forces of Ukraine totally, slowly, without any drastic jumps into leap forward, banning leap forwards, because it will entail tremendous losses from our side. But our stance is to stay firmly and move gradually, but at the same time destroy manpower, military personnel, military hardware, missiles, artillery pieces, multiple launch rocket systems, etc., tanks, and other armored vehicles of the Ukrainian army, and to force it to surrender and to give up any kind of aggression it started unprovokedly and intentionally against Donbass in 2014. Regis?
Okay, so I want to piggyback on something you just said, that Russia is moving slowly. Many people have said that this is a stalemate, that the two sides have come to a draw. Neither one can do much. And I disagreed with that, and I wonder if you agree with me. Russia has been moving slowly now, I think, for two reasons. You mentioned one, to preserve as much Russian troops' lives as possible.
Right.
But number two, Putin has stated it repeatedly. They do not want to kill ordinary Ukrainian civilians, and they do not want to destroy infrastructure indiscriminately, just bomb it back to the Stone Age. Would you agree with that?
Look, the first option is to move slowly, right? You are to save military men, then logistic support units, uh, preserve air power, preserve the Russian Navy in the Black Sea, because Azov Sea, it is under our full control, and probably to persuade the West and Kiev to sign the act of complete capitulation, complete surrender in favor of the Russian Federation, and to sign a peace treaty with a pledge of Ukraine never to join NATO alliance, to recognize uh, five territories that joined the Russian Federation as a part of the Russian Federation, totally, completely, and for good, and then not to deploy NATO forces in the country, in Ukraine, never contain any kind of military bases or NATO installations on Ukrainian soil, etc., etc. There are several other points to be incorporated into any peace deal. What the Chinese envoy recently declared that it would welcome a ceasefire agreement and to persuade Kiev to agree to give up five territories we all know to Russia. It's not a full-fledged peace plan because uh, two clauses that I have mentioned, they are quite clear and quite acceptable. They are fine, but it's not enough because it means what it doesn't mean what Kiev will do next. Probably it will attack Russia and again. What about Ukrainian militarism and neo-Nazism? It will be valid. It will not be eliminated forever. So, as to We do not want naturally to kill Ukrainians because they are belonging to Slav community, Slav nations, Slav generations, and many Ukrainians would like to have brotherhood and good neighborly relations with the Russian Federation. So why we have to kill them? We are not, by the way, using Russian regular army stationed in Ukraine against civilian population. But on the contrary, look what Ukrainian armed forces have done to Artyomovsk or other cities in Donbass, in Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic. They are ruining, concentrating these cities. They look like from above, from the sky, like the ruined cities of Stalingrad and Dresden, bombed by the British Royal Air Forces during the Second World War. So we are very careful with that because we understand that somewhere in the future, a lot of people will be needed to restore and to rehabilitate and to reconstruct Ukraine again and again because many places are still in a very poor condition. Houses burned or destroyed, etc., etc., and roads, bridges have been destroyed. So a lot of creative work to do after that. So why to destroy local population in Ukraine? Because it would be irrational, it would be a frantic idea to destroy Ukrainians. But what NATO countries are doing, they are destroying, they are killing both Ukrainians and Russians for the sake of military industrial complexes in a lot of NATO member states. Regis?
Okay, I have to ask you this. Leading up to a few weeks before the final battle of Artyomovsk, Bakhmut, um, there was a very public conflict going on between Yevgeny Prighzhin, who's the billionaire owner of the Wagner Group, and Sergei Shoigu, the head person of the Department of Defense, and General Valery Gerasimov.
Mm-hmm.
He said some very harsh things about them. He used a profanity laced rant that went viral. Now, the speculation about this was all over the map. But President Putin remained silent until the very end. And when the victory was complete, Putin congratulated both Prigozhin and the military.
Right.
Vladimir, how can one understand what really happened behind the scenes? What was it true? Was it just a ploy to suck the Ukrainians in, to make them think that Russia was weak? In your opinion, what was really going on?
Yes, the main idea of such alleged stories uh, popped up quite a limited number of time recently. I noticed that such stories appeared, but they came from Ukrainian information and propaganda bodies and sources of various kinds, and from special information operations. There is a department at the Ukrainian General Staff. So, but look, if there is a row or differences or just shoutings between the two sides you mentioned, between Yevgeny Prigozhin, the founder of the Wagner uh, private military company, and the head of the information radio and TV station called FAN, or FAN in Russian, that is very active as well in our mass media. And between the military and political leadership of the country, I mean, official leadership, we would not be able to liberate more and more Ukrainian territory. We will not be able to liberate completely by 100% Artyomovsk city, called in the past Bakhmut. We won't be able to capture the Azov Sea totally and completely. We will not be able to maintain air power in the sky of Ukraine, air supremacy over Ukrainian territory, and we will not be able to maintain our supremacy at the Black Sea. I mean, for the Russian Navy, because there are no countries that are helping us in our military punishment of the Ukrainian slash NATO aggressors. So, and right, you are, when you mentioned at the end of your question, right, you are, Putin congratulated both Wagner group and Russian military troops, putting Wagner in the first place in terms of Artyomovsk, because and their cohesion and their cooperation and the action as a comrade in arms in a full respect of this term. So it means that everything was quite normal. The discussions are underway everywhere inside Russian expert community, academics, I mean, sometimes between newsmen, journalists, correspondents, etc., etc. But nevertheless, the locomotive still moves. I mean, Russian military locomotive goes on forward gradually, but instability and stably, yes, permanently, constantly moving forward. And the morale is very high in the troops, in the society of the Russian Federation. Look, recent figure of the public opinion poll arranged in Russia. People have been asked, do you support President Putin and as a commander of the chief of the Russian armed forces? Do you support him, Mr. Putin? The answer gave yes, we do support him. 80, full, 1% in favor of supporting and backing Vladimir Putin in double-headed as a double-headed person, military and political leader. 80, or just full stop, and 1% in favor of him. I don't know the other results. Who is negative and who is hesitating? Do not have a specific answer to that simple question. but it's very easy to find. I haven't enough time to look through, but I have noticed that more than 80% of persons asked by mass public opinion poll employees. That's a very good figure, much better than many other Western politicians are currently or having. Regis?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because the popularity of Joseph Biden is plummeting.
Mhm.
It's 40% and falling. And
Yes. Oh,
every leader in Europe, Olaf, Olaf, he's around 20% favorability.
oh,
Macron is 20% favorability. This
oh,
the prime minister of
UK.
Great Britain,
Yeah.
Rishi, whatever his name is, the Indian guy, his
Roshi Sunak.
popularity is
Yes.
Shinak, yeah, his
Sunak.
popularity, and Trudeau is around 20% as well. So
Oh,
all these
they should.
leaders from
Yes, Regis. All they should resign immediately because they are not backed by the huge, massive number of people with their countries. They are incapable leaders. Oh, uh,
yeah, unfortunately, uh, it's going to take some kind of a revolution, I think, to get them out of there. But Vladimir, um, I want to finish on this topic. Um, Peskov,
mhm.
the
Dmitry,
spokesperson for
right,
Putin, the
Dmitry
Kremlin,
Peskov.
he has said, when asked after what happened in Bakhmut the fall, what's next? And he said, Russia will accomplish all of its strategic goals of the
Mhm,
special military operation. You
mhm,
just outlined that. Now, I want to change the subject a little bit, but not a lot.
mhm.
Um, I think the West and the United States is getting desperate. Even Joseph Biden signed off on the sending of F 16s to Ukraine. They've already begun training Ukrainian pilots in Arizona and I think Germany and maybe some other countries. Vladimir, the F 16 is a very old airframe.
Right.
Is
45
this
years old.
is
45
this
years old.
is this going to make a difference if they even arrive in Ukraine? And if not, tell me why.
They probably could arrive into Ukrainian territory and in Ukrainian airspace. But look, pilots, Ukrainians are not capable pilots to pilot any NATO built aircraft. They have not used it, never in their life. They do not understand English. They do not understand military English or American military English. They do not understand all those instruments on board of a pilot's cabin. Uh, a number of piloting hours needed to train Ukrainian pilots on F-16s is so little, is so limited that they can only lift off and land on a landing strip. That's it, without any possibility to be engaged in dogfight, to be engaged in a very tough operations and techniques and maneuvers in the sky on a very high speed. And by the way, we have much better aircraft, attack aircraft, multi-purpose aircraft. than American Falcon 16. Second question, a number of Russian military experts are putting on the table. Okay, where those American F-16s are probably brought not necessarily from the United States of America per se, but from Denmark, from the Netherlands, from Poland, where they will be stationed on the ground, on what kind of military airfield. Is it possible to put them in Ukraine? Is it difficult for us to destroy all those airframes on land or in the air? No, it's not difficult. Any number of F-16s to be sent to Ukraine will need a great logistic support, lubricants and gasoline depots, a lot of technicians, a lot of engineers to repair, to maintain, to service all these airplanes. It is a very tremendous job. do all other countries and the United States who are happy to send F-16s to Ukraine that we will sit idle and do nothing and will not destroy them. We will destroy them with great joy and a great desire. Our pilots are ready, and our anti-aircraft systems are ready, and our anti-missile systems are also ready. So better not to send them. But at the same time, if, God forbid, a number of NATO leaders finally agree to send F-16s to Ukraine, and this sending, this supply will be effective, will become a reality. We have deployed tactical nuclear weapons, Russian-born, Russian-produced tactical weapons in Belarus, in Belarusia. So, and as the president of Belarus recently said publicly, the delivery of tactical nuclear weapons of the Russian Federation into Belarus is underway because all specific storage facilities have been built ready to accept this kind of missiles and bombs and airdropped bombs. And by the way, the technical characteristics of Iskander M, it's a ballistic missile on land-based ballistic missile, one type of deployment and delivering nuclear capabilities against aggressor and attacker. And the second one is Sukhoi 24 interceptor fighter and bomber at the same time. They also can deliver nukes against aggressor. So the distance is known. It's not a secret. Any reference book like CIPRI or Royal United Services Institute or just many others, foreign think tanks specializing on military arms and equipment will tell everybody, I mean, the quite accurate distance of range of delivery. And it's about the tactical nuclear weapons that was signed, for example, on 25th of May, yesterday in Moscow time, between two defense ministers of Russia and Belarus. So the agreement is valid. It will be implemented. We have already trained our pilots who could deliver tactical nuclear weapons against any potential NATO attacker. It doesn't matter. And we are becoming angry and angrier because, look, we do not care what kind of tactical characteristics those F-16s are having. It doesn't matter what kind of payload they will deliver against us. But I would like to stress it specifically. But we do care because all these weapons, land-based or air-based, missiles or bombs or tanks or multiple launch rocket systems, they kill both Ukrainians and Russians. They kill our people. The Western leaders do not understand this kind of phenomena, but this is very sensitive, very touchy for us, all of us, military or non-military, like purely civilians. We are getting very angry because our people are dying, are dying due to terrorist attacks, due to continuous shelling of residential buildings, hospitals, schools, etc. Look, more than 20,000 civilians in Donbass and in the Russian Federation have been killed. Many of them wounded. Many social infrastructure and housing sector has been bombed and destroyed completely. It's you shouldn't be an expert in all this stuff if you see the ruined cities destroyed by Ukrainian and NATO arms from the sky, from the bird fly. So remember, all citizens and all leaders of NATO member countries, you are killing Russians. Will be unforgettable. Will be unforgettable. So please do not blame any criticism upon us. Blame your own leaders who are sending, like the United States of America, 38 military aid baskets to Ukrainian bloody army to kill Ukrainians and Russians. Do not forget, please. We will not forget it. We will not forget it. Be rest assured. Regis?
Okay. I want to comment on a couple of things and ask you another question.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the announcement to send tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus was a thunderclap. It was a very obvious and forceful message to NATO and the United States. In fact, I think I read where Sergei Shoigu, the Minister of Defense, said, "We have had to do this because for too long, the United States has been flying 24/7 B-52 bombers all around our territory, including into the Black Sea." And he said, "We have finally had to respond to counter these aggressive actions." I thought that was significant.
Right.
Now, the question that I have is this, and I think you and I have talked about this last year sometime. Russia and China, but we're not going to talk about China for now. We're just going to talk about Russia. Russia is maybe 10 or 15 years ahead of the United States in technology, in terms of its missiles, in terms of its aircraft, in terms of its radar that can see over the horizon. In other words, if a plane were to take off from Ukraine or Poland or wherever, Russia already knows it before it's even in sight and will be able to shoot it down before it becomes a threat. And Russia has hypersonic missiles, the Kinsal, which, people in the West are not talking about the Kinsal. But when Russia struck that deep underground command center below concrete and some 300 meters, I believe, below ground, destroyed it with one Kinsal missile, killed 300, maybe 400 top commanders from the NATO countries and the United States. This was incredible. But you know what, Vladimir, people in the United States, I don't think the people, but I think there's people in the government and maybe people in the military who have overestimated their technological ability vis-a-vis Russia. What do you think?
Yes, we will. We can definitely use this kind of system, military gimmicks like kinjal or dagger in English, translated into English, like zircon or zircon in English, and some others, just with hypersonic speed, with pinpoint accuracy, and we have plenty of them, and we will not use them fully. And if the situation becomes worse, we will do all this missile armada against Ukraine, against its decision making centers, against its military. Look, I look through look through everyday briefings made by military official spokesman, Lieutenant General Igor Konashenkov, and he delivers the story that each day around 50 or 70 artillery pieces and multiple launch rocket systems are being attacked by us and destroyed completely by various kinds of means, by using counter battery operations, using kamikaze drones with high explosives, using missiles from helicopter gunships and military aircraft, etc., etc. So we are against the escalation of this conflict. But if the NATO and non-NATO countries are in favor of such escalation, we will make it de-escalate. We will suppress any kind of military escalation used against the Russian Federation and our firm and constant ally like Republic of Belarus. And any country who is supplying arms to kill Russian and Ukrainians, supply arms to the Ukrainian armed forces, will be a target of our tactical and strategic nuclear forces. Believe it or not, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to persuade all of you, but believe me that all will be targets of our nuclear arms. Because we're sick and tired of seeing a lot of graves and a lot of weeping mothers and sisters and fathers and brothers who bury their beloved ones in country and Ukraine. And by the way, I never touched the next item, the next issue. NATO and the United States of America try to dismember the Russian Federation, to destroy it, and at the same time, NATO and the United States of America are ruining, are destroying Ukraine as the state. As the state. Ukraine that have many dozens of millions of people population now has less than 20 million. Some killed, some became refugees, escaped into Russia or to the Western countries. So there is no administrative system in Ukraine. Military is in a very poor condition. Budget, finance. It's 1/100th country at the end of the list in terms of economic situation, finance, social welfare, and it's dying. Ukraine is dying. It will die, especially when Poland will grab the Western Ukrainian, Lvov or Lviv in Ukrainian, once Polish city, right, and other adjacent areas, or when Moldova or Moldavia will also try to steal a part of Ukraine. So, what is the fate of Ukraine? Is it what the Western countries are doing? Are you going to create a flourishing Ukrainian state and Ukrainian people? No, you're just killing the country. You are just destroying and killing Ukrainian population, young and old. And the Russian Federation trying to do the same. But we are much stronger than Ukrainians. And we much stronger than all NATO member countries combined. After we withdrew also from the strategic arms reduction treaty called New START in English, and President Trump withdrew from the INF treaty voluntarily, just our nuclear capabilities became stronger. They are not verified, and they will not be diminished or reduced. Bear it in mind. Think it over. Full stop.
Okay, Vladimir, the last thing I want to talk with you about, Blinkin, Sullivan, and Nuland have said it's okay for Ukraine to attack Crimea because Crimea is Ukraine. On the other side, Russia has said Crimea is Russian, and we will do everything in our power to protect it. Now, I'm living in Crimea, in beautiful Yalta. I have recently been to Sevastopol, the home port of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. I've been to the capital in Simferopol. I've even been up to the border with Ukraine by Jankoy. And I have to tell you that you would not know there's a war going on next door, in spite of the fact that there have been attempts with drones to bomb parts of Crimea. They blew up an oil storage tank and they derailed a train. But nobody here is walking around in fear and thinking about what might happen. Now, what are your thoughts about Blinkin, Sullivan, and Nuland giving Ukraine permission to take back Crimea and to bomb it?
Warmongers. But if I put myself on the same position as Jack Sullivan, Anthony Blinkin, and many other cruel gentlemen, I would suggest if you attack Crimea, would you give a friendly advice to Mr. Putin what kind of state in the United States we shall ruin and destroy as a revenge, as a vendetta? Florida, California, New Jersey, District of Columbia? Give us friendly advice, tit for tat. Are you happy with that, Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Blinkin and others? It will be a normal reaction, a response. You attack Crimea, we attack a number of states in the United States. You will be happy. Think it over, guys. Good luck.
So, Vladimir, just today, Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of the Russian Federation, at a meeting in Moscow, he said that the Atlantic Ocean will not help the United States in a global conflict. And I suppose you could say if the United States and NATO really does do anything outlandish, idiotic, insane, that even the United States mainland will suffer.
Definitely. We have plenty of means. Our strategic offensive nuclear arms, our Poseidon underwater drone with a powerful nuclear warhead that could create 30 or 50-meter high huge waves in the Atlantic Ocean. Be very careful. Don't play with fire. Do not forget that we have something much more deadlier than the Colt or Smith and Wesson.
Vladimir, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge, sharing your wisdom, and telling viewers exactly how many of you in Russia feel about this ongoing conflict. Thank you very much, Vladimir. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much, Regis, as well. And thank you, esteemed audience, who watched and listened to us today.